Hello friends, welcome back to the James Lawrence Allcott channel. The North London derby. It has commenced and it has finished 2-2. Let's take a look at it. By the way, before we get started, I've got COVID, so I've got about 10 minutes in me. I'm going to give it a bloody everything I've got. But if my voice is a bit croaky or I cough, I apologise for that. Do me a favour, show me a bit of kindness, because I should be in bed if I'm honest. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel as we look to march to 300,000 subscribers. So hit that button if you haven't hit it as of yet. Here are your two teams. The game was played predominantly in the Tottenham half in the first half of the game. And the big reason for that was that Tottenham had the ball. And they were, I think, trying to take the sting out of the game a little bit, trying to offer up a bit of control and also trying to offer up an idea that this isn't going to be your day, Arsenal. And it was sort of overly swaggy. That's the phrase that I would use. There was sort of, and I've done it myself, where you're playing and you kind of go, I'm going to sort of fake it till I make it, and I'm going to try and be really, really calm on the ball. And it was one where, they had 60% possession, but they also had 6 interceptions in that first half. The press from Arsenal overall, I thought, was pretty impressive, and it led to Tottenham getting sort of sucked back for the bulk of the first half. Arsenal, I think, were the better team overall in the first half. That said, Tottenham did have 60% of the ball, and so that was part of the tactic. Madison was all over the place, trying to get on the ball as much as possible. And it led to him sort of dropping deep to try and create a bit of an overload in the middle, Porro as well, becoming inverted. And that at times worked, but then in terms of getting through the thirds, I thought the Arsenal sort of press was pretty impressive. Sarr and Vieira was an interesting matchup because I thought Sarr, for the most part, kept Vieira very, very quiet. And I think the thing I want to talk about in this game is that there are some elements missing here for Arsenal. Both, not by design, but also, I don't think they've got away from a certain player as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But Tottenham had the ball, but they didn't do a huge amount with it. And it was all just, the tempo was just a little bit too slow. There was a moment where Madison nearly got done right in front of his own penalty box. I think the bulk of the team had moments where they gave the ball away stupidly. Saka was up against Udogie throughout the game. And Udogie was really, really struggling against him. I think pretty early on he got booked. And then after that, of course, the goal comes from that. I think in terms of the critique for that, look, you as a defender, you know what Saka's going to do. Oh, sorry, I keep drawing boxes here. You know what Saka's going to do with the ball. He's always going to cut in and go onto that left-hand side. And for Udogie not to get tight enough to stop that shot, I think is pretty heartbreaking. Of course, it comes off Romero and goes in, but that shouldn't have happened. Udogie should have stayed tighter to him. And the fact that Brennan Johnson sort of is allowed to get between Udogie when he's tracking Ben White is an absolute travesty in itself. And again, highlights that Udogie needed to be that little bit tighter. What I would say is Udogie hung in there. He finished the game. I think a lot of us thought that he might get himself sent off at some point, and grew. And I think in terms of experiences for this Tottenham side, I think 2 things are really important here. One, the fact that they played the way that they played, and the fact that they got on the ball, kept the ball as much as they could. I think they kind of needed to get through that to be emboldened to do that more so when they come up against the Man Cities, the Arsenals, the Liverpools of this world. And I think that's a massive thing today that they've kind of got through. And I think as the game progressed, and actually more so than anything, on both occasions when they went behind, that was absolutely when Tottenham kind of came alive. I felt like they were playing a good game plan, but they were lacking that tempo that was needed to get through the lines, because especially with someone like Declan Rice, who's going to be able to eat the ground. Yes, there is space here, and I thought, obviously Jorginho absolutely kills himself in the second half when he comes onto the pitch. I thought that these were the areas for them to hurt them. Now, Vieira and Sarr kind of cancelled each other out throughout the game. Kulusevski starts with that wide point, and then it's about Porro making those underlapping runs. I thought he did it a couple of times brilliantly, especially in the second half, and that's where they started to hurt them in transition. But in the first half, with Declan Rice on the pitch, sort of covering that area of the pitch, I thought he was comfortable. They were overall comfortable. And actually, when we're talking about that swagginess, in terms of, and I promise you, that's the last time I say it, promise you, the goal from Madison comes from, I'm trying to move the ball, but I can't. There we go. The goal from Madison comes from him having that confidence in himself to try something pretty outrageous there, in terms of that little shuffle and then moving over to the right-hand side. So you go in at half-time, 1-1. I think in the second half, this is the thing that I think is really going to hurt Arsenal moving forward. And Arsenal fans, let me know how you're feeling about this, because I think there's three things missing here. Martinelli, obviously. Declan Rice having to go off, obviously. And then the replacement for Xhaka has not, shown itself to us as of yet. If we think about that second half, Declan Rice has to go off. Jorginho comes on. Vieira goes off, having done very little. Havertz comes on, doesn't do much, to be honest. And what I did want to show you guys was this, because this is the touches from Jesus. And I thought Jesus had a good game. I thought Jesus did have a good game. And I thought defensively he provides a lot of tenacity, which is really, really useful. But when we're talking about players being missing, Declan Rice, huge loss for them, because it's that sideways to sideways movement, that mobility, that ability to get on the ball and to drive that you lose when you swap him with Jorginho. But Gabriel Jesus, not having him in the centre of the pitch is one thing. When you've got to play Nketiah instead, who isn't Gabriel Jesus, they're very different players. And the pressing ability of Gabriel Jesus, that defensive ability. But what I wanted to show you was this, because he got on the ball. I think he completed 4 of his 3 dribbles. I thought he did well from that point of view. But what he's not is Martinelli. And that's the difference. So this is Martinelli in the game against Man United that, of course, they won 3-0. So have a look at this area here in the penalty box, getting to the byline, but in the penalty box. That's the difference. The difference between Jesus, and part of that is down to the possession-based football from Tottenham. But overall, Jesus is great, but he's not Martinelli. And I think that ability to have someone that can take on a man, beat their man, and change the game from that point of view is something that I found quite revealing in this one. Because I think with Martinelli as well, if you have 4 or 5 instances in a game where you can get to the byline and pull a cross back, Saka would be in there as well, right? That gives you a real chance of scoring goals. And I wonder, for the bulk of this game, Arsenal were playing in front of Tottenham. They didn't really get in behind Tottenham. And moving forward, that ability to cut through and create, that's what I think could hurt Arsenal, who ultimately have to be perfect, right? They have to be perfect. Havertz came on, did very little for me. And again, we were talking about that Xhaka replacement and what he was able to provide in terms of facilitating the other players. Maybe it's because Martinelli's on the pitch, you're able to do that a little bit better. And maybe Gabriel Jesus is a little bit more chaotic as a player. And again, I'm not having to go at Gabriel Jesus. I thought he had a really strong game. But he's different. And that lack of pace, or lack of overlapping pace, and the lack of ability to get in behind is something that I would feel is quite possibly going to be a concern for Arsenal moving forward, because there was a lot of crosses. And I guess there's a 4th player missing here, and it's one that you haven't even signed yet. That physical number 9. Because if a team's going to play with a low block, which Spurs did in the last few minutes of the game, last 10 minutes, let's say, when those crosses come in, you need someone who's going to be a bit of a bully and is going to hurt the opposition. Obviously, Liverpool, you've got someone like Darwin Núñez. Gakpo's got a bit of size to him. Jota's very good in the air. Has that sense in terms of winning a header. Man City, of course, have got Haaland. What do Arsenal have? Who do Arsenal have? Is it Nketiah? I want it to be, but I didn't see it in this game. I've got to be honest. A couple of other things I want to talk about is, I think if we go back to this here, you can see that what I thought was really, really interesting was how important Madison was all over the pitch, getting on the ball all of the time. And when he goes down with that knee injury, you're thinking, uh-oh. And so in terms of the importance of players for both teams, Madison is so, so crucial. And so, obviously you need to enjoy Madison as much as you can. Hopefully he's, fit for as long as possible. But I think there needs to be recruitment. And I think everyone knows this, because you're going to become a bit of a one-man team. That said, I'm only really saying that from an attacking point of view, because Madison, in terms of how he's able to create both goals a little bit, was so important, and he is just such a live wire for the team. Jorginho has an absolute stinker, obviously, for the second goal. And again, I thought Gary Neville's unfair in terms of saying, over celebrations, but that's just a basic error. That's why you're in the team, Jorginho, is to be good enough on the ball. So to make that kind of mistake is utterly inexcusable, unforgivable, and disastrous for Arsenal, because, then it's 2-1 if you can get past the next 10 minutes, and Arsenal were pretty comfortable from there in. I have to talk about one last player. I have to. And his name is Basuma. Let's highlight this guy. This guy is outrageous. Utterly press-proof, able to drive with the ball, got in different areas and then just burst through a load of players, creates, 94% pass completion when you are totally surrounded throughout. I thought he was amazing. And just as importantly, there were a couple of moments where he just put out fires on either side. Defensively, so smart as well. What a player he is. And the spine of this team, this Spurs team, I think there's just so many positives throughout. I think they're only going to get better. And I think Spurs come away with this one feeling pretty good about themselves. And Arsenal, I think it's about expectations, isn't it? On the pod with Flav, he was talking about Tottenham being sort of embryonic. And yes, that is true. And they are setting new expectations all the time. For Arsenal, if you can't have Declan Rice, if he's not going to be in the side, and you're not going to have Martinelli, and you've not got Trossard, it could be a tough couple of weeks for Arsenal. Right, guys. Hopefully I've made some sense here. Apologies if I haven't. My head is incredibly foggy, and I'm going to go now. But if you have enjoyed this video, do me a favour. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and have a good day. Bye. Brain's not working, sorry.